Hey everyone, it's Natalie Bencavanga, and welcome back to Facts Over Fear. We've got a lot to talk about today, you guys. I want to kick things off because I don't know if a lot of people know what is going on in Memphis, Tennessee, or the fact that it is being occupied right now by ICE. So I asked a question. What happens when the people filming police become the people under investigation? And Nick Valencia really answered that, and he's been tackling this topic through his own investigative work. I just want to read a little something from your most recent Substack, or one of your most recent Substacks. You said the 31 agency unit brings together the Memphis Police Department. We're talking about the Memphis Safe Task Force, the Tennessee National Guard, the Tennessee Highway Patrol, as well as the FBI, the U.S. Marshals Service, Drug Enforcement Administration, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives. But here is where the operation really ramps up and what people are missing. Within this task force is ICE. Now, Mother Jones has also reported that a federal lawsuit filed by the ACLU is accusing the multi-agency Memphis Task Force of retaliating against residents who filmed or observed law enforcement operations, including ICE enforcement. Nick, I want to get into the nitty-gritty because you've been covering this so closely, but I want to just pose this larger question to anyone that's joining us right now. Is America entering an era of surveillance where it flows in every direction except upward, right? Citizens are being watched, communities are being monitored and harassed. But what happens when ordinary people try to watch the state back?
Yeah, that's a good point. Is it not flowing upward? Is it not flowing exactly like it makes me think of this idea that they want us to hold the powerful accountable until the powerful are them, right?
Ooh,
It's like everyone
yes.
wants to go after fraud until you realize that maybe it's happening in your own little space as well, and
Mm.
maybe you're the perpetrator of it. Anyway, I,
No,
I
I like when you go like that. Just go with it.
yeah, yeah. I think the surveillance state is flowing a lot more freely in the United
Mhm.
States, and the infrastructure is expanding with unknowing participants, right?
Yeah.
And I talked yesterday to the former mayor of Altadena,
Hmm.
Sasha Renee Perez, who's now a state senator in California, and what
Hmm.
she was saying was that she felt bad because I don't think she had the foresight to understand just how much flock cameras would be used
Mm.
against ordinary everyday people. Put in the wrong hands, I equated it to a knife. This technology, this surveillance state that's expanding across the United States, a knife can be used for both good and bad. And what we're seeing right now being done in the name of law and order is occupation. Memphis
Yeah.
is being occupied right now by about 1,500 up to about 2,000 agents who are part of this federal task force. I didn't realize this, and this was happening right underneath my nose. Tennessee is
Hmm.
just, to the northwest of us, and there is 2,000 agents right now, and that's almost equivalent to what we saw in Minneapolis and all of Minnesota in Metro Surge, where they had about 3,000 agents. So just consider that for a population of about 6,000 or 600,000 rather, 610,000 thereabouts. You have 2,000 agents for a city. You had 3,000 agents in Metro Surge for the entire state. So that's just kind of, the comparison there.
We have some intelligent people watching because they're sharing their own thoughts about preventing the surveillance because the martial law is here. That's what Spencer Gray is saying. Lalissa is saying we're already there as it pertains to this sense of surveillance state. I don't know. I have a hard time accepting that from the person that you mentioned that you were talking that she didn't think that it would go this way. Hasn't she ever watched any sci-fi movies like ever in the last 30 years, Nick? It always
I,
goes this way.
I
Come
was having this conversation at lunch today, and that's exactly what the person I was having. She's like, I had friends that were far ahead of this data centers and how all of our data is being sold, which is what flock cameras are being used for, license plate, automatic readers. And so, yeah, I mean, maybe not so much grace should be given. I think this is what's happening, right? This is what
on.
happens is in the name of law and order, in the name of public safety, things sound good in broad strokes. Make
Hmm.
America great again, coming from a different person, may sound good on paper, right? And so these
Hmm.
things are done in the name of law and order and public safety, but then again, they get into the wrong hands. And it's always somebody who says, "Hey, look, the evil mad scientist behind the scenes, that's a one-off, that's an aberration," until we learn that it's not really an aberration, it's what's normal. It's
Yeah.
how this stuff is used, right? And what it's sold to us as is that this will be an aberration, but what it ends up becoming is routine and normal.
Absolutely. And, of course, all kidding aside, what's happening inside these ICE facilities is terrifying. I just had Jaime Martinez on my show yesterday. We were
Yeah.
discussing more of a deep dive on Moshannon, which is here in Pennsylvania, in the state that I live, which is the largest detention facility that ICE has in the Northeast. And we were just doing a deep dive on what's happening within these communities that have been neglected and abandoned, that used to maybe be coal towns or had other industry and have been left to basically degrade. And it's ripe for a space like a detention center to come in and offer employment. And just how sinister that whole cycle, this carceral economy now that we have blooming alongside this surveillance state, alongside this fear of, Big Brother constantly watching us, but at the same time having a very hostile agency like the Memphis Safe Task Force that doesn't want us watching them. And so I think it's important that we say
Mm,
why. Plaintiffs, also according to Mother Jones, say that the agents were using intimidation tactics against civilians exercising what they argued are protected First Amendment rights. And
yeah.
federal officials have strongly disputed those allegations and are defending the task force as, to your point, a necessary public safety effort that has led to quote unquote thousands of arrests. But of course, we have to ask ourselves, um, safe from whom and safety at the expense of what? And whenever I hear law and order and
Yeah. At the
safety
expense of privacy.
at the expense of privacy, I can't help but think of like the white woman, like who gets to be protected in these systems. It always to me
Yeah.
reflects back to this larger conversation around white supremacy and who we've always turned the gun at in the name of safety. What are your thoughts on how racism is playing into this, the dynamics that you're hearing and seeing with boots on the ground as you've been reporting on this so extensively?
Yeah, I think, I mean, these are big ideas, but I think that they're real. I think that the patriarchy exists. I think it's a mostly white dominated world. And I think we see people in communities like ours, like mine, try to gravitate towards that whiteness and realizing
Mm,
very quickly once they get there that their proximity to it will not save them in these circumstances. Because in these broad strokes, and the people that are behind making these influential decisions, they want to get rid of asylum. They want to make the country whiter. When they say make America great again, it's hearkening to the past where it was people of color who were held under a thumb
yeah.
and weren't treated like normal people or wasn't one to one. And then fast forward now, and I mean, we could have history lessons here. And I'm not much of a historian, but I know a little bit. And I know that some law enforcement agencies were established to catch slaves, right?
Yeah.
Well, then you fast forward now and you have these specialized units like the Scorpion unit that's out there beating the shit out of their own people
Hmm.
and killing people on camera and then taking pictures of it and sending it to, the opposite sex to brag about, right? I mean, what is going on now is happening in the wake of Tyree Nichols. But if we zoom out even further, what's going on in Memphis is happening historically as crime is going down, even if the optics are that
That's right.
Memphis is crime ridden and that there's
Hmm.
gang shootings and that rappers are beefing and killing each other in broad daylight with Young Dolph or beefing Young Gotti or that this is the town smells like weed or it's too black and we've got to flee out to the suburbs. All of those narratives are true of what's happening in Memphis, which is why you have an agency like this, which is
Hmm.
supposed to replace, I mean, effectively has replaced the Scorpion unit. And now you have the Memphis Safe Task Force, even within its name, it sounds good, right? And it's
Right.
not been good. It's been terrorizing, Natalie. It's been
Hmm.
terrorizing to the black and brown neighborhoods because of all of these arrests, which have been nearly 100,000 of them, about 97,000. Traffic stops, 9,000 arrests. Of these 9,000 arrests, all of them basically have happened in black and brown neighborhoods. It's not like
Yeah.
white people are being taken into custody. So
Right.
who, just go back to your question, who's really being protected here?
Hmm.
It seems as though these residents are more so being terrorized. And that's what I've learned, and that's what I hear, and that's what I found in my reporting.
And that's why I find your insights so important and meaningful. And you've also been working on a docu-series with Corruption Inc. Can you talk a little bit about some of the most surprising things that you have found investigating all of these intersections with ICE?
I think just how much they just play in our face, and it's just right out
Mm,
in the open, I mean, I watch CNBC now because you can find these YouTube clips about them bragging on their earnings calls of
mhm.
immigration detention being a unprecedented growth sector. And then you see that play out in the day-to-day, every day on CNBC in the real world when they talk about the markets and stuff, you know? I mean, so I think that that is what's most surprising and shocking to me is that just how I always knew how much money was made, but people really are the product here, and they're inflating it, and you have individuals who are asking for voluntary deportation who aren't getting it. Right now, I'm really suspicious because I have about 8 or 9 families that I can count that
Mm,
we have done stories on almost exclusively that have been let out of custody. And so I'm like, "Why? Why?" What you know, the skeptic in me, the journalist in me, right? The journalist is in us is like, "Mm, why are they getting out right now? Midterms are coming up. These are good stories. People will forget very quickly what
yeah.
people have gone through." But really the most surprising thing to me is just how much cruelty is the point in all of
Mhm,
this. Just as much as it is to make money, I think it is part of it is to like just prove a point of just how,
mhm.
look, you're gonna suffer because you did it the wrong way or because I don't know, the punishment is far greater than any perceived crime that's been committed.
Right, especially when we're talking about something like a civil offense, right?
Yeah, it's a misdemeanor. It's a civil
Paperwork.
offense, correct,
Right?
correct.
We're just talking about paperwork, guys. Like that's what's so wild to me. And I echo, and I'm so glad you brought that up around the crime rates dropping. I had just read
Yeah,
that the FBI even admitted that violent crime has plummeted. So it's even more egregious that they're ramping all of this up. And we've talked about Memphis, but I want to talk about Virginia because what I'm concerned about is the lack of response on the left. We know what the right wants. We
mm,
know what they want. They've been very clear. Most of this has been laid out in front of us in Project 2025. We're very aware, but I think
yeah,
it's a little fuzzier around what is the purpose of the Democratic Party or the Democratic establishment right now. We've been talking about aggressive enforcement, surveillance, and what happens when government power expands. If you're just joining me, I'm Natalie Bensavanga with the awesome Nick Valencia. And
that's you.
but in Virginia, this debate is really exposing yet another tension. What does resistance to ICE look like when Democrats hold the power? Because according to the Virginia Mercury, shout out to local media sources. I always try to use them whenever I can. Governor Abigail Spanberger just vetoed bills supporters said would make courthouses safer for immigrants and limit opportunities for ICE detentions, arguing they create legal conflicts and false protections. At the same time, she signed measures requiring greater transparency from law enforcement officers, including concerns around masked federal agents. And I issued an executive order around how ICE can operate on property like schools, hospitals, and courthouses. So that has a lot of us scratching our heads, Nick, because this is sort of a question of are we being pragmatic or is this triangulation? And which side of this is she truly on? Because I think people are thinking blue no matter who, and they're voting for perhaps a more moderate Democrat or
Yeah,
whatever that even means
yeah.
anymore. But when in power, this is actually a pretty conservative position to be vetoing bills that limit opportunity for ICE detentions, especially because we see what's happening within these detention centers. What was your thoughts when you saw this?
It's playing both sides. It's Democrats have a lead right now and leave it to them to fuck it up at the 99-yard line. I mean, I think that they think the blue wave is coming. I do predict there to be
Mm,
sizable gains made in the House, and I think the Democrats are gonna have a very lovely night in
mm,
November. I also think, though, that they're mistaken these auditors for converts. They're really truly auditors. I mean, I do think that they're going to be disappointed in a way. I'm gonna go do a story, next week very soon on congressional candidate Bobby Polito,
mm.
and he's gaining a lot of traction with conservatives, and I think some of them are keeping their side eye on him, wondering if he's going to switch up when he goes to the White House. I think liberals even will vote for him, and they may be disappointed in some of his stance on, uh, female reproductive rights. That's to them what moderate conservative or moderate Democrat means. I
Ooh,
do think that, yeah, and it's going to be tough to see somebody who toes a line like Polito will and like others will, who believe in law and order and maybe get funding from or are, supporters of backing the blue. quietly because of money. It's always about money. And at the same time saying that they want to abolish ICE, but then will probably vote for legislation to expand immigration enforcement. I mean, it's just what's done. What this says to me is more so that we suffer from this disease of elitism, and it's always
Yeah.
about the elite helping each other. And I think that that's what I am now trying to come and reconcile with without being hopeless.
Mm.
I want to use my privilege and the elite uh, pinch of elite that I have to like help the people and truly be
Yeah.
part of like el pueblo salva el pueblo, and that the
Mm.
people can step up and I could be in this space where like maybe on paper, somebody like me you would think would vote for Trump or would vote for
Mhm.
privileges, but I'm really out here thinking like, how can I be of service? Because that's what journalism is about. So what this
Yeah.
says to me, and what happened in Virginia is just how full of shit it is, and people that they speak out of both sides of their mouth, including Democrats, and
Mhm.
that it really is about a bias of elitism more than any sort of left versus right or red or blue.
I so appreciate that. We have Arlene Mach saying women's healthcare is not negotiable. Oh my goodness, I couldn't agree more. Once again, to your point, Nick, the problem I'm having with the Democratic Party as a whole is it's easy to not have to legislate if you just keep saying, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to take that right away from you. Because then when you get into power, all you have to be is not Trump, right? But what I
Well,
keep
that doesn't
saying,
work though.
it doesn't work, but that's what I think where the disconnect is. And I have to tell you, I don't have this level of optimism about November and the election
Why not?
because I felt that the primaries were really, really sluggish for the Democrat turnout in
Mm,
general. And I also just
yeah.
have
Okay.
concerns hearing what Elon Musk's ex had to say about his involvement and perhaps our voting apparatuses in the general in 24. And there's a lot of organizations, like I think it's called the Election Truth Alliance. They have information put forward to talk about these anomalies at a statistical level, and the Democrats won't act on it. And I think there's a lot of fear, once again, about removing themselves from this status quo mentality and saying if we just stay in the middle, we'll attract the Trumpers that can't vote, that refuse to vote for Trump anymore. And I don't think, and I continue to say, this is not the right agenda. If we want to win a general, we have to say abolish ICE and mean it. And we have to say universal health care. And let's start there.
And voting suppression's real. And if we want to
Yes.
take a look at what's happening, you don't have to look any further than what's going on here in Georgia, in Atlanta, specifically Fulton County, DeKalb County. It's interesting what you say about like generally speaking. I understand like the lack of turnout here in Georgia. Democrats and progressives, they're so geeked out at how many people
Mm,
turned out for early voting, and
mm,
they saw that, and they did really well, including some progressive candidates that are now in a runoff, right,
yeah.
in a very blue part of the state. But it's so interesting to me to see that enthusiasm. I don't know. I mean, I just wanted to say that. I just wanted to point that.
No, and believe me, I appreciate it. I need everyone to know I used to be a very optimistic person. And being in this space has hurt my little heart. Okay. So trust me, I hear you. I am also in a very swingy, maybe the swingiest of swing states here in Pennsylvania. It's weird.
Yes.
It's really weird here. We had a bomb near Lehigh County that like an explosive device was found on election day. That happened during the general election as well that no one's talking about. There's a lot of intimidation that happens at voting polls here in Pennsylvania. A lot of blank ballots that were sent out to mail-in voters that never got to cast their votes. A lot of shenanigans going on. I didn't want it to come off as conspiratorial, but just honest in the fact that I am concerned with, what I'm seeing from this primary turnout, at least in my region, plus the shenanigans that are going on. So,
Yeah, and speaking of shenanigans here in Fulton County, remember it was just a couple of months ago that the Department of Justice went into Fulton County and seized some ballots that we haven't heard of since or heard about.
yes.
In fact, I was going to make it my job to go look at that this week
Mm,
because we have the midterms coming up. And there is really a fear, especially when Elon Musk starts showing up. We saw him
yeah.
on the trip with the president to China, and there he was. There he is. There. You look around,
There he
and
is,
just when you
everybody.
think just when you think he's gone, here comes an election.
It's a little concerning, okay?
There he is,
There he is.
It's like, what, like, right, it really is concerning because Elon
Yeah.
had disappeared, and then now he's back at a very convenient time, and I don't believe in coincidences. If there's
Mhm.
any conspiratorial part of me is that, I call them God shots. I'd like to look
Mm.
into the higher
Okay.
power of them, but I really don't think that there are coincidences in life, and
Right.
it's not a coincidence to me that Elon has showed up just on the run up. It's gonna be a really crazy summer. The
Yes.
economy is going to be difficult for everybody. I think what I'm seeing in terms of gas prices in California, because I travel around the country a lot,
Yep.
right? They
Yep.
haven't seen $5 gas in weeks, maybe months. And so
Mhm.
I think maybe that spreads and starts to become a theme as we get deeper and deeper into these wars in
Yeah.
Venezuela, whatever's going on in Iran. Um, we still have Russia and Ukraine, right? That war that continues. And talking about surveillance, I mean,
I know.
they're testing out autonomous drones that are going to be able to make their own decision as to whether or not they use lethal force. And so
Mhm.
that's the kind of stuff that concerns me. It's not just like the impact of the economy that's all this that has us spread thin everywhere. It's that this technology is going to be tested out and has been tested out, and now it's going to come its way west, I think. And we're starting to see more and more of that, right? Like we've grown up and we grew up, I think, you're younger than me, but I grew up in a time when we didn't
Mhm.
have phones and I had a
Mhm.
pager, and that's sort of the only thing that tracked me. And now
I'm just
we're,
imagining you with a pager. Sorry, it just made me smile.
right in front of Foster Freeze on the payphone calling, okay, you can pick me up, mama. I'm ready to come home. Yeah,
That's so
totally.
fun.
It was really fun. It was really fun. It was so fun. And we drank out of the water hose. No, I mean,
Hell yeah.
hell yeah. I think, though, that now the technology is so interwoven in our lives that we sacrifice things like privacy and we do things in the name of law and order. And to land the plane on this, we like open the doors up to the feds in our state because we want to keep Memphis safe. And instead, we open the doors up to people having their civil rights and civil liberties violated. The
Mhm.
ACLU is now suing on behalf of four defendants, ordinary, everyday citizens. One is a retired teacher who were filming, and they had the right to be out there filming because a federal agent on public streets, you could film them.
Yeah.
And so long as you're not interfering or getting in the way, what has become really um, blurry is like
Mhm.
what it means to interfere in a federal investigation now. And under a conservative administration that's very pro law enforcement, it's going to be a very wide definition of what that means, right? And like that's what's concerning to me is that we are maybe subconsciously sacrificing our privacy rights and our constitutional rights in the name of law and order, ironically doing it and while we give it away, right? That's the hard truth.
Absolutely. I took a class recently on exactly this, how to engage with filming or documenting federal agents without being considered, obtrusive
Oh,
based
wow.
off of all of this. And there's a really specific distance that they say is basically safe
Do
for
you
you.
remember what it was? I mean, I would be
It's
interested to hear.
it's it was at least, I would say, 15 to 20 feet away.
Wow, I was gonna guess like 6 to
No,
12 or something like that.
if
It's like
you're
a really
close enough
considerable distance. Wow.
if you're close enough to potentially touch them, like with your arms outstretched, you're way too close. Like they could just, if they wanted to, spin around and say you are interfering. So the further you can give yourself, the better. But to your point, we want to make sure that we're close enough that we can pick up audio, that we can, see them clearly. So it's a dance,
Wow.
but do not be close enough that even if they stretched their arms out, they could almost touch you. I think that could get you at least in trouble. Now, would the charges stick? Probably not, but you probably would get arrested. Um, just noticing, we've had so many comments and people sharing all of their thoughts,
Yeah,
and I
so fun.
appreciate all of them. Valerie was talking. I want to pivot to this topic around the autopsy. So thank you, Valerie, for sharing your thoughts on Ken Martin.
Uh-oh.
I interviewed Ken Martin probably in right before the election, and it was an interesting conversation because he had a lot of optimism and hope about meeting the moment and Kamala Harris's
Mm.
opportunity to really take charge and speak, out and for the people. Um, but it was interesting seeing how angry he was when he released the 2024 autopsy, as they're calling it, around what went wrong in that election. And I think there's a much bigger thread here, right? That's connecting this story of the autopsy around to immigration, enforcement, civil liberties, and of course, that institutional trust, even between media and people, the law
Which has
enforcement
collapsed. It's
and people.
collapsed.
Oh, it's gone. Like it's not even there because once again, to our previous points, when Democrats hold power, there just is this growing disagreement around what does resistance to this fascist state look like, especially when there is so much compromising already and whether governing has just become completely disconnected from what the voters want. So I'm going to raise this question. If Democrats can't consistently mobilize people around the issues that matter, like to your point, economic anxiety, housing, healthcare, democratic institutions like immigration, what are voters responding to instead? Because this analysis still seems to have the Democratic Party divided over the autopsy about what went wrong. There were a lot of things missing from that report, and whether the party is confronting deeper structural problems around messaging, trust, and political identity at all. I always say, Nick, the left is like herding cats, which is why we just can't get our shit together. But what were your initial reactions to that autopsy?
I think that the kinds of candidates that are allowed to run or get a seat at the table or even build a longer table, as we like to say, oh, you don't like
Hmm.
the table, build a longer table, are the people with money, are the
Oh,
people that
yeah.
get the funding, are the people that come from very elite backgrounds and they may have great
Hmm.
college degrees and maybe sometimes I see in politics this desire to really outdo the poverty story in one another of
Mm.
how poor can you sell yourself to the American people that you really made the American dream.
Ooh,
And what I think people really strive for more so now is they'd rather vote for the person that say, I grew up rich, but I want to help you.
yeah. Mm.
They would rather vote for somebody or give somebody a chance who they feel is real and themselves in every room. And I think you have to put the elitism away. The Democrats have a real chance here. And there's a chance to run candidates who may be, or find candidates, or give candidates platforms who have the hood story and that's real,
Mhm.
who really come from a background where, like, they did come from that, but maybe they don't have the proximity to whiteness to know how to get into these rooms. Or maybe they fumble the bag when they are in these rooms because they don't know how to talk to money. And part
Right.
of the political game is being in the rooms with money. One of the comments here is no mention of Israel. What
Right.
people are tired of is AIPAC. When you hear about progressives and what they're pissed at,
Hmm.
they're primarying Democrats in blue districts because they think that they can move Democrats even further left.
Yeah.
When I think there's more, it's hard to be passionately moderate. It's really easy to anger tweet or anger message. It's really hard to be like, I think that is good. That's
Hmm.
right on. It's hard to
Hmm.
be really loud about being pragmatic, I think, in some cases. And
Yeah.
so I don't want Democrats to squander an opportunity and see these auditors as converts. And I
Mm.
think Democrats have a chance right now to see that people are tired of the elitism. No matter how liberal you present yourself, you could still be rich as fuck and liberal and not understand how poor people are. Do you want to know how many billionaires I talk to these days that I don't they there's two types of rich people. As I've learned in this last year of talking to rich people, there's the
Uh-huh.
rich people that truly made it. They realized the American dream and made it, and
Mm.
that's a tenacity and a sense of ambition, and they're a little bit of assholes because they've
Hmm.
really believed in themselves. And then there are people who grew into that money and
Hmm.
absorbed it and inherited it. And they fancy themselves, I don't know what they fancy themselves, Batman or Bruce Wayne or something, right? But they have this delusional idea because they're banking off their ancestors. And sometimes those people know how to talk to the investors. They know how to
Mm.
talk to the money in the room and get to the next primary or race. But you're not really truly speaking for any people. And at the end of the day, we each have our vote and voice. And we're
Hmm.
supposed to use our voices, not our fists, right? And so I think, yeah, I mean, I see that as an opportunity for Democrats right now is to really platform people who have like a truly authentic story,
Yeah.
and lean into that authenticity.
I couldn't agree more. I think the problem, to your point, beyond APAC specifically, is just the amount of dark money and lobbying in general, right? People like myself 20 years ago were saying Citizens United was wrong. I
Wow.
was a kid and I knew that was not going to end well,
I
right?
didn't know
Once
about
again,
Citizens United back then.
oh, yeah, it was. I got I got involved in this kind of young, so I was a terror. But point being, I to your point, I think beyond the vote, we have to understand that voting is, yes, a tool in our toolbox, but people are very discouraged right now by their vote maybe not mattering or not carrying weight depending on the city or the county or how they've been gerrymandered or redistricted. And there's all those conversations.
Yeah.
There are other things we can do. There's room for civil disobedience. There's room for peaceful protest. There are room for economic blackout days. There's room for general strikes. If we can get the unions on board, we could really do something. And I think the only thing that you've said it earlier that these people care about is the bottom line. And so I think there's going to have to be ways to push back that are not going to feel great, but are going to be necessary. And not everyone is going to be able to do them, which is why I always say plug into your mutual aid organizations, donate, give
Yeah.
money to groups already doing this work. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's a lot of incredible people on the ground. And also this sense of like, you and I think we're trying, and that's why I really was drawn to your work and drawn to you as a person when I met you in Chicago, because I felt a real kindred spirit of understanding that this work is bigger than us and it needs to be bigger than us and that we
Yep.
can be a part of that arc of change. I like to think of it as like a rainbow. But at the end of the day, there may be a seed that you plant, Nick, that somebody just goes, ooh, that resonates with me. And they take that little seed and they water it in their life. And you may never see that it bloomed into a tree 3 generations down the line that now people can sit in the shade under. And that, I think, is the hard part to connect for people, that the work we do today, we may not see the full benefit or return on it when everything that we speak to is so instantaneous in this very consumerist culture. And so I use facts over fear, not just to do just that, right? Remove the fear and speak to fact, but also to give people a dream space that there is a better world possible if we all decide that's what we want. And so I just really appreciate you always being so willing to come on and chat with me and share your dream space. And I just want to end with this question: what keeps you motivated to do this work? Because you could have stayed in a corporate cushy job if you wanted to. I mean, you were that guy. Like, you were doing it at CNN. I mean, it's wild to me what you've done on your own, but also the incredible work you did then. Why do this? Because this is hard.
I love it. I love it, and I love the community that I'm now a part of. It's we, not me.
Mm,
Sincerely, I've gone from feeling like this cog in a wheel to really feeling like it's about the people whose stories I'm telling. And
mm,
if you see some of the original videos that I have, I think the biggest difference between my reports now and then is that not only are there not voiceovers, but you don't really see me in the pieces.
mm,
It's character led, and that's the storytelling because it's about
mhm,
the community. Um, I know, yeah, I could have gone back to this is a testimony right now. I really
mm,
see more than ever. I think, like, it's so silly, but I like you know that movie, like, Slumdog Millionaire, where, like, the
mhm.
guy, every little bit of his life and moment led up to that point,
Yeah.
and when it was June 6, 2025, and I was sitting on my bed depressed because
Mm,
things weren't turning out the way I thought they would, um the siege of LA happened by ICE, and
mm,
I was watching that, and I knew that I was about to go back home the next day, and to me, again, no coincidences in life, Natalie, it was a God shot.
mhm,
I get off the plane, I ended up taking a flight I never do, and I get off the plane
mm.
and standing at the bridgeway, are Customs and Border Protection agents and ICE officials, and I filmed it, and that first clip did 4 million views, and so that was the very first clip I posted after leaving my old job. And
Wow.
so I was like, That's what I said." I was like, "What?" And then I took out my phone and I started going in the streets filming like this, vertically, filming,
Mhm.
you know?
Yeah.
And people resonated with it. And so I just kept going. I think the biggest key to success is consistency, because there were days where I was broadcasting to 12 or 13 people.
Sure.
There were posts that only got, 12 or 15 likes.
Mhm,
And sometimes there still are.
mhm,
And I have really, getting back to that Slumdog Millionaire theme, down to the person I chose to have a family with and my
Mm,
wife, who's been with me through the come up. Like,
mm,
before I became a correspondent at CNN, you're talking about the arc and the rainbow, like, she was with me before I got on air,
mm.
and so she never cared about CNN stuff.
Right.
She cares deeply about this, and so I see how proud it makes the people that I truly care about. I dressed up as Spider-Man for my son's 5-year-old birthday, and he really thought it was Spider-Man, and he took him over to my Emmy, and he was like, "Spider-Man, my daddy's cooler than you," and he meant it.
Oh.
And so, like, it's this silly little stuff. This is the first time I told that story without crying, by the way. Um, I I truly believe in all this stuff, you know?
Yeah.
I believe that solo el pueblo salva al pueblo, only the people will
Mm,
save each other, that this is
mm,
my role in it, this is my burden. I talk shit to President Obama when he was messing with unaccompanied minor children. I'm going after President Trump because I believe what he's doing is unlawful. I can have good faith conversations. I grew up in the hood and now have this American upper middle class life that I built for myself here.
yeah.
I lived in LA and now I live in the South. I just feel like this is the slumdog millionaire thing, you know, that like
Mhm.
God wants me here. God
Yeah.
wants me right here. And
Mm.
so and we met and we clicked, right? Right
Yep.
away. And then I watch your stuff now and I'm like, I love the conversation. I love how
Mm.
smart you are. You think about things that I don't. And so there's pretty important people in here. Like Ray Collazo, I saw him in here. That man leads Democratic that man is a leader in the Latino space and in Washington, D.C. And that man is listening right now, among others, right? And so it's really cool to be able to have these types of conversations that are raw, real, and very important. And that's why, among the many reasons that I continue to stay in this. So thank
Whew.
you. Thank you for having me here.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Okay, everyone, that was great. I I feel like we ended on a positive note, which is always fun. And I so appreciate you just being so vulnerable and honest. I do think that this work, as a former social worker, as someone with their MSW, I have continued to say that journalism isn't just a pillar of democracy and maybe the most important one, but it is also a form of social work. And we can use this as a tool to build community and create the solutions that we are seeking for a better tomorrow for everyone. So, Nick, if people haven't figured out that you're amazing and all the things already, and besides subscribing to our Substacks, where can they go to watch your new docuseries?
I feel like we need to like start having a show, Nick and Natalie, Natalie and Nick or something.
Done.
Yeah, Natalie and Nick. That's what it is. I mean, we need to do something. This
I'm
is
here
like
for it.
yeah, I'm here too. We've been talking offline of doing it. It's clearly an audience for it. If you want to follow my stuff independently that we're doing on NVN, it's Nick Valencia News across all social media platforms. And then I am also doing long form investigative reports, as Natalie
Mhm.
mentioned, with Corruption Inc. through Theorem Media. Those are primarily on YouTube. We do have a Substack that's growing. All of it is brand new. We
Mhm.
have another series coming out. The first part is how private prisons get rich off ICE. Second part coming up be very interesting, I think, to your audience. I know it is going to be to mine. It's about how private equity has infused itself into every layer of our healthcare system.
Mm.
And that people really are another example of people being the product. When you bring up the healthcare system in this country, nobody has positive things to say. Nobody has a great
Mm.
healthcare story. People used to really like their primary care doctor. I don't know very many that like still have one that they've seen for more than a
Mhm.
few years. And so we're starting to investigate basically that this is a disease of elitism in this country. The rich will always be taken care of. And we're starting to see like even companies like Delta only advertise to like the upper class and like the rest of us. What about the rest of us? It's like every zip code is going to get screwed. And so
Mm.
we're exploring all of these themes now in our work at Corruption Inc. You could follow us there at The Real Corruption or Corruption Inc. And yeah, thank you again. I really appreciate all this time. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. I know I kept you long and I'm sorry. I apologize. But it was so good. It was so good. All right, everybody. Have a great long weekend. I hope you get some rest and some time to spend with people you love. And as always, until next time, take care of yourselves and each other. Bye, everybody. Thanks, Nick.